It's time to step out now into cosmos, into mythos, into psyche.
Welcome back to another podcast. This one on tone, chiropractic, and more on medical astrology. And it's with one of my best friends in the world, Alec Brogan. I felt quite blessed that I was able to hang out with him the day before I left. It was also the day after the Dreaming with Chiron retreat on site as well. And so I actually was a little bit pooped during this conversation because it was the morning after the 4 days that we all were, dreaming together and enacting something like an Asclepion up in the high country in Colorado. And it was amazing. It was the first time that I had ever done a retreat like this, or really anything like it. And it was also the fourth retreat that I had done. So like this senior effort really felt like that. It felt like I knew what worked at this point with retreats, I knew what didn't, and also having been really immersed in the old ideas of what went on at the Asclepions, and just employing a lot of these techniques with astrology for 4 days was really an incredible experience, and we learned so much. We learned that, Chiron's birthday, which is November 1st, I had never made the connection with the Day of the Dead. It's like, is it Halloween? Is it November 1st? Is it November 3rd? Well, before Spanish colonization, it was in the summer, like the beginning of the summer that it was celebrated. But ever since colonization, it's around these days, Halloween the 1st and the 2nd, and Chiron was discovered on November 1st. And so there's a link here that we all explored a bit in our dreaming with ancestors, that if Chiron is the great mentor and he teaches so many things, probably one of the most essential teachings that he will bring to us consistently in our lives is our connection to our ancestors. And so this is a powerful idea that we're encroaching swiftly on because we're, less than a month away, right? We also learned that Chiron shows up in many forms: as a lady, as a child, full horse, quarter horse, half horse, zebra, even as a kissy-faced runner for one of the participants. But whatever the form that he takes, it's always in the form of some sort of great teacher or mentor. As we know, the centaur is the mentor. And hooves down, it was the most healing retreat that I've done, and also one of my highlights, I think, that happened during this retreat was this amazing conversation that came up around the current state of men and women, and this collective battle that we witnessed over the last couple years with the sexes. And it was so cathartic, it was so honest, it was overflowing with love and laughter. And I personally, it was definitely Chiron's gift to allow such a roundtable discussion to occur, but it was also Venus coming back to the sky, I feel. And so #you too? ? I hope that this has been your experience as well, not necessarily that topic, but whatever healing that you've been courting almost since the Venus cycle began a year ago, that it's coming to a head, that it's starting to make sense, that new skin is growing around your heart, or that your heart is getting much bigger, right? And so anyway, I can't wait to do more retreats like this. The one in Peru in January, I'm very eager to see what happens there. And then also thoughts, like if you're interested in doing something like this, because so many of you seemed like you were, but you couldn't make it this time around. Are you interested in doing one in England? Perhaps in Crete or Iceland? There's ideas that are on the table. The most likely one at the moment is definitely England, but I'm also really drawn to go back to Crete because there is an Asclepion site that we can visit there, and we can do some real good work on the old island. And So if you hadn't listened to the first podcast that I did with Alec a couple years ago, where we did actually talk about Chiron, I'll just give him a little bit of an introduction. Again, he's one of my closest friends. He's a fellow Gemini. He has studied so many forms of astrology, mainly Western, but he's currently in Freedom Cole's Vedic astrology program, so he's bit by that bug pretty intensely at the moment. He knows human design. He's a chiropractor. He's just a well-rounded Gemini man, and he's a very bright and aligned individual as well. And so I think that you're going to really enjoy this conversation. Again, I apologize for maybe being a little pooped or tired at the beginning of it, but just bear with me. And about halfway through, I think it starts to get a little bit more lively, and you start to get a glimpse into our dynamic a little bit. But I think you'll learn a lot. I think a lot of what Alec is now offering in the world is probably going to be of interest to many of you. And so reach out to him if you feel called, and enjoy this conversation, and I will see you on the other side.
Alec, another ship in the night, my friend.
It's true. Here we are again.
Casa de Colorado.
Yes, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, so for those listening, Alec is sitting across from me in the place that I just did the Dreaming with Chiron retreat. Mm-hmm. You didn't dream with Chiron with us.
No. Last night, though.
I guess a little bit. Did you have any dreams about Chiron, you think?
The only dream I could remember was with a spider, actually.
That's not Chiron.
Yeah.
Well, actually, what we learned during the retreat is that Chiron takes many forms.
Oh, well, okay.
Spidey.
Yeah.
Is it teaching anything important?
I'm still sitting with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. So, this is the second time you've been on the podcast.
Yes.
First time you feel that the work that we're about to talk about wasn't fully formed. And now it kind of has its true face, maybe even its true name as well, right?
Do you mean the work that I've been developing myself?
with chiropractic, astrology.
Yeah, I would say so. It's definitely, it will be a developing work probably for quite some time, but it feels really clear right now, definitely.
And so how would you describe it?
Well, it's something to consider just the way that our bodies process information. So like, let's say that right now, you and I, there's a certain energy present, even get to the level of an archetypal signature that's present right now in the space, right? And so let's say that one of us can't fully experience that. So the way that our system is perceiving that information, if we aren't able to fully experience it, our bodies will actually store that information, right? Intelligently. And what I'm offering is that these patterns that our bodies actually process information with and store information as, we can actually see through the archetypal landscape of the planets using astrology. And of course, there is already some traditional information around this with the association of different signs with different parts of the body. But what I'm doing is actually looking at the way that the nervous system and the energetic bodies hold and store information. And the beautiful thing about this is that actually it's a really powerful thing. Like if we have an altercation right now and there's anger that isn't processed, my body will store that in a particular way until I'm able to fully experience it. And those tissues that held that information as such will actually liberate that energy, and ideally I'm able to experience it in a way where I derive wisdom and I learn the appropriate lesson from that. And it all starts from whatever space is being held here, which if we do take astrology as it is, and really explore that, we can see that geometry and that map as the planets and the stars.
And so let's use the example of an altercation.
Sure.
Like if I were to leap over these pillows at the moment, by the way, the microphone is sitting on a tower of pillows at the moment. And yeah, there was an altercation.
You tell me, what planet do you think that would be?
Well, we know it's a Scorpio rising moment.
Oh, there you go.
The moon's in Scorpio.
Right.
And we would start there, right? With the Lagna or the ascendant, right? So we would want to know then the condition of Mars. Mars being in Virgo.
Virgo, right? So you have an 11th house.
Yep. And so is that kind of the approach? Like if you're working from a moment, or like if it's a person like that comes to you and they are experiencing, say, pent up rage, or they're not able to let something go. Do you use electional? Or not electional, but sorry, Hori?
Yeah, no.
In the way of doing this?
So that's why in the beginning when you asked about the work, I answered in the way that I did. And that this body of work will be constantly developing, because the practice and study of astrology is an ocean. So anytime that anyone brings in something of a system to operate within that, it's going, every time it touches a facet of astrology, it's going to shift and evolve. And if it's true, if it does hold truth, then it needs to be able to always evolve and shift. So of course, right, like the condition of Mars currently in the way that it interfaces with someone's natal chart. So of course, so what's present right now in the sky is different for you than it is for me, right? Because you have your natal chart and I have my natal chart, right? And to say the least, we can just simplify it that way. So the condition of Mars right now is impacting you relatively different than me, okay? Your relationship to Mars itself, again, even looking at that energy of an altercation, is fundamentally different than mine because of your natal chart, right? And again, just speaking simply right now. So yeah, we can definitely take that into consideration. Of course, what's happening right now in the sky. However, that is not the way that I use the system. The way that I use the system is actually to take what happens on the table and use the chart as a way to derive meaning, right? To actually see the archetypal landscape that's happening with the person. You can look at the current sky, but also with their natal chart. So if I'm seeing someone constantly showing up with this unprocessed anger, right? I've been blessed in my life to learn different systems that have really supported me in this. Like I stand on the shoulders of giants within my own profession of chiropractic and astrologically, of course. So when I'm looking at that in the system and I'm recognizing through my palpation and different analysis that, okay, like this person is really having a difficult time processing anger. And when they are getting in these altercations, their system is not able to process it. And the tissues are actually holding this tone, right? That's a word that we'll probably use a lot here is tone. So there's this tonicity that isn't presenced in the system fully enough to learn the wisdom from it. So I'll actually take a look at their chart and I can actually see, okay, when I palpate this person's body, I'm really feeling a lot of unprocessed rage. I'm feeling like they're having a difficult time with the way that they relate to others. In this way, I'm feeling anger in their system. And of course, we can get into the organs and all these things. I mean, it's an ocean, but let's keep it at this right now. We're just talking about the nervous system. And then I'll take a look at the chart. And I'll see what's going on with Mars, right? I'll see what's going on in their natal chart, and I'll see what's going on with the transits. So that's primarily the way that I've used it so far. Yeah.
And as far as identifying, say, parts of the body, right? Like Mars, do you use traditional medical astrology with it? Like in, like say Scorpio relating to the genitalia or Mars relating to the musculature in their blood, or is it something else?
So
like a
that's
unique
where
model?
this is different.
Yeah.
It's because of course there are those things to take into consideration, but I'm not actually doing that. Like I do use the traditional map of the signs on the body. I found that really valuable. But what I'm actually doing, and why we're actually having this conversation, is because what I'm doing is fundamentally different, right, than what is traditional. And to my understanding, that actually what other people have done so far. Because what I'm actually doing is I'm asking the question, how does the tonal landscape actually incarnate? How does the planetary field and the geometry of the sky when someone's born, and as their life progresses into the current moment that we're looking at that person, how do the planets incarnate? And you can actually read, when you learn to palpate the body in a certain way, you can feel that person's story, right? You can feel what things have been really integrated well. And you can feel the things that the person's had a really hard time with. And the body is unbelievably intelligent. So all of these different energies, emotions, tones of their life that haven't been processed or have been well are stored intelligently in the system. Okay? So what I'm doing is I'm actually taking a look and seeing, can we actually use the map of astrology to understand the way that this person is able to integrate or not integrate energies on an archetypal level.
And is there any universal symbol, perhaps, that shows someone that is well equipped to integrate, like a trine between the ruler of the chart and the ruler of the six, or something like that? And also, is there an indication?
I'm going to need you to get a little more specific. What's the question?
Yeah, like a signature in a person's chart that shows
interesting.
like these parts of the body are usually well suited to integrate, or an aspect, say a Mars Saturn square that relates to the 6th and the 8th houses.
Yeah,
that
okay.
Make it hard.
Totally. So
integrate.
we can even just get as simple as dignity, right? Like, let's say that someone has, and it's funny, like we're here talking about Mars, right? We have like the Scorpio locked right now. So let's say that someone has Mars placed in Scorpio natally, right? Do you think that that person is going to thrive off of like really deep Martian type of energetic dynamics? What's the answer?
Well, the volume is up, so the assumption would be yes.
Okay. What do you mean the volume is up?
It's the way I talk about exaltation. It's just
Oh,
like the
got
volume
it.
is
Oh,
up.
okay, cool.
That, yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it's not, and Mars is obviously exalted, and it's
Domicile.
yeah, right. It's domicile because Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Now, if we have Mars in an enemy sign, or even in its debilitation, let's say, do you think that that person is going to be able to integrate that energy better or worse, to use not the best language?
Right. So if Mars is in Cancer,
Right.
volume is down, harder to
To
work
be
with
to
this.
presence that tone,
Yeah.
right? Because again, from this lens, we're actually looking at astrology as a tonal language. We're actually looking at the planets as taking birth in the human world in an energetic frequency or tone, right? Like right now, all the planets are present, but one might have the volume up. That's actually a beautiful way to look at it. Like right now, like this entire realm of vibration, frequency, of tone, we can use these karakas or these planets as a language for that. And when we look at the person's nervous system, we actually see the way that they're dynamically communicating with that tonal landscape. Okay, so yes, when you look at the natal chart and you see an exalted Mars with, these really powerful aspects, right? Everything's good. There's not some condition that, like, sure, it's in Scorpio, but something else is going on that makes it really difficult. Let's say hypothetically, it's a clean situation, strongly placed Mars compared to like a debilitated Mars. Yeah, we're that's the whole thing that I've been exploring, is like, how does this person experience this tone with this domicile Mars compared to this person with a debilitated Mars? And so at this at this point in my life, I've been really lucky to work on a lot of people. And most of those people, I've had their charts. And so, yeah, I've been asking these questions. And I can say that it's been very promising. And I've had a lot of really beautiful results from looking at these things.
For a person that, say, hasn't received chiropractic work,
And this doesn't actually necessarily have to be within chiropractic, because I actually don't have my license yet. So what we're speaking about right now has largely, if not completely, been outside of the chiropractic realm. A lot of it looks even like doing cranial work, or just energetic work where you're extending the awareness into the meningeal system, or actually just asking the body, like, what is the cord doing? How are the tissues of the body, how are they expressing right now? Are they in a normal tone? Are they in hypertonic? Are they hypotonic? So a lot of this, of course, like professionally, I'm a chiropractor. So naturally there is going to be a lot of that present. But a lot of the work that I've done with people is much more sustained contact, where I'm deeply connecting with presence with the body, and it looks more like cranial sacral work to most from just an external viewer than like a traditional chiropractic session would. Just for the record.
And so there may be listeners that are like, well, I have Mars in Capricorn or Mars in Scorpio. I have debilitated Mars in Cancer, right? And they might be connecting some of the dots.
Sure.
With examples that we've given so far. And so in the way that you're working with the tone of this, like what would it look like in the treatment room?
Yeah, so for me, and this honestly probably would have been a good conversation. There's a lot that would have served this conversation before just jumping right in, because what we've kind of done is jumped right into the deep end, where we're already talking about application and technique, and we're getting really specific, right, where it's like, what if this specific planet is debilitated, and how does that show up in the system? Which is great, but there's a lot of fundamental philosophical things that we need to be clear about here that would probably serve people before just jumping in the deep end. And one of them is that the body is always looking to heal. Fundamentally, that's its nature. As long as there's life force in the body, there's this incredible, unfathomable innate intelligence that's always looking to right itself. I mean, we even have like a righting reflex that modern medical understanding even acknowledges. So, So something that's really important to speak to is that the body is always, everything it's doing because it feels that that's the right thing to do in that moment. Okay? So with that being said, if there is that altercation that happens, the body is storing that information in a particular way in order to learn ultimately a lesson that it can't experience in that moment. Right? And this is the nature of trauma. And it can be a subtle thing and it can be a profound thing. And what I've done is I've looked at the way that I've considered embryology, anatomy, different energetic systems, and I've looked and seen how different information is held in the body, and I've used the language of astrology to make those connections. And so the fundamental question is, how is the body being brilliant in this moment? So when someone shows up on my table, what I'm actually doing is I'm doing an analysis, but I'm also asking the question of, how is this body expressing health? And when I'm feeling into the system, I'm not actually doing anything. Actually, the less that I do in the treatment room, the better. Often what I'll do is I'll access the innate intelligence of that system, and I'll witness itself, and I will witness the system. And it's almost like my hands are almost like mirrors for the system, and the body will begin to actually notice where it's not fully experienced certain things, and it will process that tone and heal. So the way that a treatment looks is very, I'm not even really considering the astrology when I'm treating someone. That's something I may be tracking certain tonal things I'm feeling, but after I'll look to the chart. And maybe I'll look to the chart before too, and with an idea, it's like, oh, interesting, like there is this debilitation right now, or there's something really intense happening with this person's transits. So let me consider that tone. So maybe I'll palpate with a certain awareness because there's something happening in the transits that's very difficult for them to integrate. And I will just say one more thing, is that this is an invitation to live an astrological life in a certain way, where we are seeing every person, every experience, every dynamic in our life with a certain tonal quality. And there's a planet behind that, at least one, right? And then there are planetary dynamics. I mean, it gets very complex. But what I really love about this is, and it was about 4 years ago, this started to become very real. And I'm sure that there are people listening right now that this has been a reality for them for a long time. But noticing the way that the planets take form, you know, it's like when you're with someone and they're embodying, like we're vessels, right? We're vessels. And we're vessels for these incredible transpersonal energies that come in, and to experience ourselves, others, and life itself through the lens of these planets, of these karakas, is a very rich window into living a life of meaning. And it brings the world of symbolism and meaning into the healing world, which for me has been an enormous blessing.
If not the whole point, right? It's like if astrology isn't healing or helping, then it's hurting something, right? And I think it's something we can speak to because we are in the wake of this amazing experience that so many of us just got to have of doing something like an Asclepion. The old tradition of temple sleep, finding, like you talk about symbols, but also direct contact with these gods, like Asclepius, the god of healing, his progeny, Chiron, and seeing how we can work with those encounters and those symbols. And you're also talking about like the magic of the hands and being able to sense all of this subtle energy through the body.
And it is subtle.
Yeah.
And the thing is that this is actually what we're speaking to, right? Because there's the gross, there's the subtle, and there's the causal.
Yeah.
And so this is the way that it's almost like the subtle body informs the gross. But here's the magic. When we're talking about astrology, we're talking about the causal body. So we're actually looking at the way that the causal body is impacting the subtle and the gross. So we're looking at the gross manifestation of a subtle dynamic which is arising from a causal dimension. Right?
And it's the hands, kairos.
Right.
And this is the point that I wanted to make with it, that is so important. That the word kairos is of the hands.
Yeah.
And everything that you're doing is with the hands.
Yeah, it is, yes.
And of course, we think of Chiron, we think of chiropractic, forms of divination like chiromancy and whatnot. And there's just this amazing gift we have. I mean, if we have hands, if someone is listening that doesn't have hands,
there are other ways to feel.
There are other ways to feel,
yeah.
Indeed. And I just think it's really important to like make those connections. And Chiron as a figure, as a centaur, well, he did have human hands. He does have human hands. And it's something that I don't hear talked about often. Personally, when I'm talking about Chiron, I'm not speaking about hands too often, aside from like wild crafting and shooting bows and arrows and stuff like this. But there's a deep tradition of working with the hands and being able to sense these three bodies that you're talking about,
Yeah.
or to receive information in that way.
Yeah.
And even in the last podcast, the one that you love so much with William, like he's a pulse master, right? Being
Yeah.
able to get the same information you're talking about from the pulse. Hands required, right? So just basically bringing Chiron into it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know. Like, there's different systems bring in different information, and it's important to honor that. It's important to not put a blanket over things, because there are things that he's likely picking up for sure that the system that I'm speaking to doesn't as well.
Yeah.
And so it's like in honoring the different forms that healing and somatic, analysis, just honoring the differences actually really supports our patients. So
My only point is the importance of the hands.
absolutely. Yeah.
That's the Kairos thing, and also kind of inviting Chiron then into the conversation, because your whole journey with this started with him, and it was a remarkable transit where Chiron was transiting your north node, and
to the degree.
And I believe we talked about this the last time you were on, but it was 2 years ago. So if you want to refresh new listeners to that transit and like kind of what this journey has been for you.
Sure, yeah. Well, really what needs to happen is to go back a little bit, just to recognize like the roots of the journey. And it's actually interesting. It has an interesting astrological piece to it, because at the age of 16, something really profound happened for me. And what year does Jupiter mature? 16. And when we actually and we're getting into Jyotish now, which I want to just recognize also here. I think it's like really important to honor lineage. And it's really important for me to just speak to how much I've been learning from Freedom Cole. And just like really acknowledge that if we do get into speaking about Jyotish, I just like really want to take this time to like share with people like his gift to me and like a lot of people, and just that lineage too. That's important for me. But so at the age of 16, my life totally changed. The fabric of my being changed. And I went from not having any inclination towards spirituality or anything of the nature that we're speaking to being just totally obsessed. And it was a mystical experience. And eventually went to Naropa and studied classical Indian raga music. And the reason that I got so into this is because I recognized that each raga conditioned the space in a certain way. And each raga had this personality, like there was like an essence or a spirit that would enter into the room, right? And it just became such a fascinating thing for me to learn this language of tone. And then I actually got pretty sick and tried many, many things. And eventually I met a network chiropractor in Boulder, Colorado. And he hardly touched me. Just these gentle touches along my spine. I would have these beautiful breaths and these just incredible releases and integrations. And I recognized that, okay, like here I am studying classical Indian raga music and yoga at Naropa, but my path is actually calling me towards becoming a chiropractor. And it didn't really make sense. So fast forward, making a long story short, of course. But I began to study chiropractic and tonal chiropractic, and I recognize, wow, just the way that a raga conditions the space, so does a nervous system, Mm-hmm. And that's really, if anything is to be expressed in this conversation, it's exploring that landscape, is recognizing that we are tonal beings. We live in a world of tone, of frequency. And for me, what feels like a big part of my journey right now in my offering is looking at this tonal landscape from an astrological perspective, and honestly, just humbly asking, like, I have not mastered this yet. This is just something that I'm exploring myself with people that I care about, and it's an honor to do so. But it's just to ask this question of what's the relationship between the somatic experience and the tonal landscape of astrology, and how does that come together? So that brought me to chiropractic school, and the first day of chiropractic school, Chiron was exactly, maybe to the arc minute, we have to go back and look, but definitely to the degree. My first day, Chiron was conjunct Rahu, my natal Rahu. And then when I finished, when I graduated, Chiron was, what I believe it was my we looked at it. What was it? My
Your progressed moon was on Ketu.
Yes, but with Chiron, my progressed Chiron and Sun had just together moved into my 8th house.
That's right.
So there's just been a lot of it's been a lot of Chiron for me.
In seeing that with you, I've been able to notice it with other clients as
cool.
well. Not just with chiropractic, but
Sure.
getting involved in big ways with the healing arts and like literal symbols when massive Chiron transits happen, and like the stories too that were gathered this weekend were, remarkable. Every single person that was here had either Chiron conjunct the Sun, Chiron on the North Node or South Node, or on the Ascendant. And so,
and was that all natal, or did you also
all natal?
see? Okay, yeah,
All natal. A couple Chiron returns happening.
Wow.
And just that information, and it's clear that something like an archetypal complex, but I just prefer to say Chiron himself brought all of us together. Chiron brought you to this path, right? And then we'll keep giving you tools to help understand it, right? Like there might be a phase with acutonics. There might be a phase with mantra. There might be a phase, like you working with tone in very specific ways to just like have like a full spectrum idea of how to work with it all, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because for me, one of the really exciting pieces about the work that I'm exploring right now is the way that ritual comes in, the way that plants come in, the way that mantra can come in, different remedies, all these different things. Because once we really have a working and really profound connection between the tonal landscape of astrology and the way that the body holds information, well, all of the traditional, and this is something to explore, but my hypothesis is that all of those traditional remedies from Jyotish, all of the different, like you were mentioning, acutonics, all these things can fit and connect. And so we're just building bridges. So really it's just another bridge. And it's, for me, it's just an ever present question. Like, it's like, and I think it has to be that way. I mean, maybe at some point it'll be like really concretized, but at this point, it's just a question. It's every time I put my hands on someone, it's just an unknown. Every single time. Every time I look at a chart, it's like, okay, like this is new every time. And that's really important for me, at least at this point in my journey.
And the main astrology at the moment that you're in, I mean, you mentioned freedom, is Jyotish. Yeah, you have, I mean, you and I have known each other for 8 years, mainly talking
Totally.
Western.
My background is definitely Western. Yeah. And you know me. I mean, I've also been, really excited, curious, and have studied Jyotish before. But for me, freedom is I consider him my first Jyotish teacher. And definitely. The past, I don't know, however long I've been studying with him, I'm not sure how long it's been at this point, the time has flown. But it's really blown my world open, and it's been really humbling. And at certain times I've had to kind of accept, okay, I actually have to take a step back and really take a lot of this in. And that's actually what I've been doing. I've taken a bit more of a step back from practice because I've been integrating a lot of new information. But what I'm also really happy to say is that in this new information that's coming in, it actually shows more congruence in the work that I've been exploring that we're speaking to.
Taking a step out of practice, I thought you were taking a step forward.
Yeah, I think
practice.
it's both.
Yeah.
I would say the past month I've been stepping more in.
Yeah.
But before that, and honestly, even within chiropractic school in general, like, I mean, I haven't really been giving a ton of readings besides people that contact me. I mean, there's no advertising, there's no nothing. It's just when people reach out and want a reading that I do it, and sometimes I can't even do that. But I did just finish, so I am moving more into an open, available space. But yeah, I think that the point that I'm making is it's been a humbling journey to study Jyotish so deeply, and it's also been one of the most fruitful, if not the most fruitful journey that I've taken into astrology so far.
Yeah.
And the more that I learn, the more excited and congruent I actually feel with the work that we've been speaking about.
We talked about it last night. I mean, you're a man who deeply appreciates tradition.
Yeah.
And
totally.
There's tradition in the West, but I think a lot of the ancient astrology is just being rediscovered.
Yeah, right.
And so the lineage isn't alive in the same way that it's alive in Jyotish. And also one thing that I know frustrates a lot of people is the Western astrologers, like everyone has their own take on certain elements. Like, you know, you take Rahu and Ketu or the nodes of the moon. I mean, some people don't even know what Rahu and Ketu is when you refer to them like that. It's just the nodes of the moon, or sometimes it's just the north node.
Right.
And
right. Like some programs not even placing the south node.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just a language issue that is really interesting because we're like, well, what is true? Well, if jump ahead 1,000 years, and all of my students, all of your students start to have a more congruent understanding of Rahu Ketu that is our own commentary on the observations of our own ancestors.
And if I may, one of the things that I actually feel very touched by, like in the lineage that I'm with right now, is and I can't speak for the way that Freedom practices. I don't know, but I can speak to some of the things that we've spoken about in class, and it's very open. Yeah. You know, it's very traditional, which for me is like so beautiful. And we can talk about Uranus.
Yeah.
You know, and ask the question, oh, I wonder what it looks like. Like the other day, like we were talking about, like, I wonder what it looks like when Uranus shows up in the Navamsha Lagna, right? Because whatever shows up in the trines of the Navamsha, which for the listeners that aren't aware, it's the ninth divisional chart, which is a very important chart. That shows the natural talents or talents of the person that they come in with. And so the question came up of like, well, what does it look like when one of the transpersonal planets, we didn't call it that, but Uranus, Neptune or Pluto or even Chiron, is in the Lagna of the D9. And what came up was, well, let's look, and it's like this open thing. So it's like you have the tradition, and then you also have the ability to ask questions and explore. And so that's what makes my heart like explode with excitement. And that's where I'm at right now. I mean, with Jyotish, like I'm 110% in love, 110% inspired. And I'm also, I have the background that I do, with the Western. And so, that's accepted and it's embraced. But first, I want to really learn the tradition. I'm really dedicated in studying from this lineage and really getting the traditional information and honoring that, and then taking my time as I bring in the new things. And that's my way. Obviously, it doesn't have to be everyone's, but that's important for me.
What example did you find?
Whoa, it's going to take time. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, this is something we need to look at 10,000 charts, I mean, it's like we really have to take our time, and maybe that's where you come in. Maybe you start looking at, the Navamsha with all the readings that you're giving and considering that. I mean, it's for all of us to do. I mean, and this is something you and I have talked about a lot, is this orientation that people have around like protecting information. And I'm guilty of it too. I mean, we're in this culture where people are like, we all want to protect and claim things. But one of the really exciting things for me about lineage, and even just exploring astrology in a community in general, is that we're all in it together. And that the information that you derive, if it's done in a really integrable way, it supports not only us, but all the people that we work with.
Yeah.
And that's really exciting for me. And so I would say maybe check it out and let me know what you find. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do the same, you know?
Yeah, I kind of miss looking at the Navamsha. I used to look at it in every chart that I ever did.
With tropical or with sidereal?
Both.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, that was in the beginning when I was trying to figure out, like, can I keep everything tropical or do I have to? Right.
Totally.
And at this point, like, it's like just using the Vimshodari Dasa with everything else.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, I love Freedom's approach, and I hope that he gets to come on the show.
Yeah, I think that's the plan. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, totally.
And I'm aware, everyone listening, that you're like, oh, God, another advanced show where I don't know these words that he's talking about or they're talking about. But it's important, to broaden your understanding that astrology, is there's many strains. And when we're talking about divisional charts or
and the
systems,
Western system uses traditional charts. I mean, the Navamsha to Jyotish is the D12 to Western. So like the Hellenistic practitioners, to my understanding, utilize the 12th harmonic chart, just like we
explain
use the
that
9.
for everybody.
So you take a chart, right, and you divide each sign by a certain number. Yeah. So when you divide the Rashi chart or the D1, the natal chart, and by 9, you get 108. Yeah. Right, and 108 is this beautiful number that we see all over Vedic, wisdom and tradition.
Well, just the world.
The world.
Yeah.
Right. Totally. Sure. And, it's said, and this is a highly debated thing, but it's said that if you take the distance between the Earth and the moon, you get 108 moons. If you take the distance between the Earth and the Sun, you get 108 suns. And it is roughly true. I mean, you can run the numbers, look at the NASA numbers, but you still have people, debating and things like that and how close the numbers are. But I find it really cool. So the Navamsha, you see this, these incredibly deep things coming from this 9th division. And so, you call it the Dharmamsha even, or the Navamsha. So you can see, for instance, like the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th house are the gifts that people bring in. Like the 1st house is what people don't even need to study. It's just like a natural gift, right? And, there are so many things. There's like a really cool technique that we've been learning about where you take the Atmakaraka, which is the degree with the planet with the highest degree in the natal chart, excluding Rahu and Ketu because they obviously move in the opposite direction. And you take that planet and bring it into the Navamsha, and that shows you the nature of the soul and what its desire is to bring in. And you look at the trines of that. And so there are all these really beautiful things. And, with what I'm studying with Freedom right now is there are so many divisional charts to use. You have the D10, right, for career. And you have the D20. And that shows more of the spiritual life. You have the D24, and that's education. You have the D60, and that shows past karmas. And so, depending on what you're doing with the person, you're using these different charts, and each one is read differently. So for me at this point, it's honestly like really difficult. Like, I don't know if I could look at like a Rashi chart without looking at the Navamsha at this point. I could, but it's like, there's so much there for me at this point, and then I can't speak too much on the utilization of the D12, with the Hellenistic, because obviously that's not my tradition. But harmonic charts are not solely unique to the Vedic system. Harmonic charts are totally utilized with the Western as well.
I like that idea with the highest degree planet. So
Yeah.
let me rehash that.
That's the most karma.
Most karma, right. So you could take like an analytic planet, which is say the 29th degree of a sign, and then you also cast an Navamsha, and then you place that planet from the natal chart in the Navamsha, and that tells you the nature of the soul.
And that we have to be careful here. This is a very deep thing. So What's
color the soul
It's
is?
called the Karakamsha. Well, the color of the soul is actually the planet that is the Atmakaraka, right? So each planet does have a particular color.
Huh.
That's true.
Yours is purple.
Mine's green.
Oh.
And yours is smoky.
Is it?
Yes, it is.
Why? Because K2 is my highest?
No, K2 actually cannot be an Atmakaraka because K2 has no head.
Why the hell is mine
K2
smoky?
So K2, this is interesting actually. K2 is the Moksha Karaka. So what would that look like if someone had K2 as the Atmakaraka? Well, they wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
But Rahu for you is the Atmakaraka. So Rahu is smoky, which is very cool. It's a very powerful planet to have as an Atmakaraka. For you, it's actually, and for everyone, I'm going off rogue memory here, but you have an exalted Rahu in your 11th house. In Gemini, Rahu is exalted.
Gemini Sag.
Is it Boga? And which Sagittarius is also a very beautiful place for K2 too.
Smoke.
But yeah, so anyways, so you take that planet and you bring it into the Navamsha, and that becomes the Karakamsha. Amsha meaning the house with the Atmakaraka in it. So there are many techniques that you can do with this, but the one that we were talking about is we're actually looking at what is the soul wanting to learn and master in this life. And so the planets that are conjunct the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th, from that perspective is how you read that. But that's just one technique. I mean, the Navamsha itself is an ocean. And yeah, it's very cool.
We've mentioned 3 oceans.
Yeah.
The 4th ocean, I think, is a linguistic one. It is a whole other language, and it's nice to revisit that part of my brain.
Cool, yeah.
Because I'm only using essentially one technique from Jyotish every day of my life.
Cool.
And
thus it gets very deep, right?
Oh,
because
it's incredible.
You whip it so much.
Yeah, like I can use it in reverse order. Like I can look at a chart, sometimes just the natal chart, but especially when I look at the transits and progressions and guess.
Wow.
And a pretty high percentage of the time, like what Das and Bhukti the person is running.
Wow.
And it's just because I've used it thousands and thousands of times that I always look at it with people. But yeah, with all of this, I mean, it's really important. And for people listening, where you're like, if you're really intrigued by it, I mean, there was a great conversation that Chris Brennan had with Freedom on his podcast.
Yeah, totally. It was about the Vimshotri Dasha, actually.
Yeah, it was about that. And time, different qualities of time and personalities of that. So you can listen to that podcast. There will be one hopefully on this show soon. And then where would you point other people like that are just curious about Jyotish for beginning? I mean, well, it depends on how deep they want to go. Because if people want to become a Jyotishi and they want to become a Vedic astrologer, I would contact Freedom, hands down. And I would do his program, but you need to strap your seatbelt on. I mean, it's not like, it's like you need to be ready to study good solid 15, 20 hours a week, and if you don't have a background, then maybe more. I mean, we've lost a good amount of people just because like it's a high standard, and the people that stay though, it's like, we're on fire. We love it. And if you are someone that maybe is a body worker, reach out to me. Say hi, see if we want to work together. I do work with people already. I do have a group of people that I work with that we're exploring these dynamics. Mostly, if not all, chiropractors, but it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, if you're a cranial sacral therapist that's curious about astrology, even if you're practicing Reiki, I mean, as long as there's an understanding of the anatomy and there's a deep curiosity around healing and asking the question of like, how does the tonal landscape of astrology incarnate?
then yeah, reach out. I mean, it's a fun conversation to be had. But if people are curious about Jyotish, yeah, contact Freedom. He's very good.
For sure.
Yeah.
And if someone's just interested in saying a book.
Oh, in a book?
Like, what would the book
Well,
be?
honestly, not to keep you, like, I would say get Freedom's book.
Yeah.
Get The Science of Light, Volume 1.
Yeah.
And maybe read it 13 times and then take the class. But there's a lot of free information too, like on YouTube and stuff that Freedom has. And also Freedom's guru, Sanjay Rath, Pandit Sanjay Rath. And also Visti Larson, who is Freedom's guru by. So there's so much. I mean, there's so much free stuff. But jump in too. You know, I mean, if you really want to study, jump in, and it's very affordable. But just make sure you're ready to commit. You know, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
And now you're in Denver, so for everyone
Yeah.
in the Front Range listening,
Yeah.
Alec literally moved back
Like yesterday.
And I'm leaving tomorrow.
which is how we roll. We're always shifts in the night.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
Almost our entire relationship is on the phone.
Yeah, totally.
Like two high school girls.
Yeah, exactly. 8 hour long conversations.
But it's great. I mean, we've hashed out many ideas around astrology.
Oh, totally.
Moved through a lot of
Countless.
relationship stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of debates, which I usually win.
Yeah, well, obviously.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
One thing actually that needs to be brought up that hasn't been, and we're going to need to do another one soon, I think, because we didn't even speak about human design.
No,
And,
that's too much. For this
no, I know,
conversation.
but
Yeah.
with the work that I'm doing with people, it's crucial, and the reason is because it actually shows when you start getting into type, right, which is aura dynamic. You are really looking at someone's geometry. You're really beginning to look at, okay, how is this planetary field, and it's in a unique way with human design. But still, how is this geometry of the planets interfacing with this person? And how is it impacting their energetic body? And so for me, when I do look at people's Jyotish, at this point, because of how much I've done with human design, I mean, I've been reading human design for, 6-7 years now, and been doing the experiment itself for probably 9 personally in my own life. I can't not look at it. You know, I have to consider it. And I'm asking the question, like, well, what does it look like? There is a particular dasha. I won't say it right now, but for people, if they do want to study it with me eventually, there is a particular dasha that I'm looking at to see if it actually does apply to the human design in certain ways. So that's really exciting. And
just one dasa.
there's a particular dasha that numerically fits well with human design. And I'm not I'm still exploring. It's nothing that's set in stone. I'm just, when I do readings for people, I'm just taking a look and seeing what checks out and what doesn't. But yeah, it's just a cool landscape to explore. So I would say that if people are also curious about human design and the way that it interfaces with astrology, and if you're also doing hands-on healing work, I would say reach out, because there's a lot that we can talk about.
How do they reach out, Alec?
Use Facebook. Yeah, it's simple. Just find me on social media. I mean, you can go to alecbrogan.com. But the back end's it's still getting built out, so you're not going to find much there right now. But yeah, just contact me on Facebook. And I'm pretty accessible right now. I mean, obviously I have my professional life with chiropractic, but doing readings is one of the most joyous things of my life. So I do, I can schedule like a reading a day kind of a thing. And I think I'm probably like 3 weeks out. And if that's okay with you, then reach out and we can do something.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a true pleasure to watch your growth through all of this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for being there for sure. Yeah. Ships in the night.
You're now a doctor.
Yeah.
Now you live back here in Colorado.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
One day we'll be in the same place and we'll be able to create something in the physical. Very cool.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
Hippocrates father of modern medicine, 18th in the generations of the Asclepian healers, once said that a doctor who does not know astrology is no doctor but a fool. And I remember so clearly the first time I heard that quote and what it lit up inside of me. And for those of you that are familiar with my story, you know that I first got into astrology interested in using it as a diagnostic tool. And it's not that I've stopped ever from doing that. It's just my focus in weaving in the medicine, my background, medical Qigong, 5-element Chinese medicine. In astrology, that part has waned a little bit, but what I do with story and what I do with the chart and everything, I think it's always remained intact. But as you have seen in the last 2 shows, it's resurrecting, and I think a lot of it has to do with studying the history and learning about the Asclepian and everything that has come through it, like doing the Dreaming with Chiron retreat, for example. Like, so much is coming together, and it kind of does feel like a full circle moment. It feels like a Jupiter cycle, because I did start doing astrology readings last time Jupiter was in Sag, and so it really has been 12 years of this work. And anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Alec and I. Again, you can find him on Facebook. If you're in Denver, I highly recommend seeing him there for some work, some chiropractic, some of the astrology. He's really great at what he does, and I'm sure you could pick up the vibe from him as well. He's a really great guy. And yeah, he's just starting his practice. And so don't be shy, reach out to him, let him know what you felt, what you thought about the podcast. And yeah, we'll do it again. Trust me, we've just been waiting for him to graduate. And now that he's graduated and all of these thoughts are coming together, maybe we'll do the next podcast on human design. I have done one show on human design in the past, but I think Alec and I will have to continue that exploration a little bit. This podcast was brought to you by Solar Fire. No better tool in the world of astrology, really, than this one. Perfect for dabbling in Jyotish as well, because you can cast South Indian charts, North Indian charts. You can see the Vimshodari Dasa cycle in it and other such techniques. And so you can do all of that within Solar Fire. There's so much in it. And if you use promo code SOMA on their site, which is alabe.com, you get 15% off of the program, which will be on Mac soon enough. This podcast is also brought to you by 4 Sigmatic. That's spelled out F-O-U-R, Sigmatic. And this is the Great Mushroom Company. And if you are brave to attempt bridging both of these worlds, that is of Western and Eastern astrology, you may just need some cordyceps in there to give you the stamina or the brain power that is offered by lion's mane mushrooms. And they have these in their coffees, they have these in their elixirs and many other forms, and you can experience their products by going to 4sigmatic.com using promo code SOMA, and then you get 10% off of any of their products. Also, if you go to my website, holstoheavens.com, that's H-O-L-E-S, plural, holstoheavens.com, you can sign up for readings and classes. I've done a few on Chiron over the years, and also a recent one on ancient healing techniques for the modern astrophile. So there's many classes on there, and if you do feel called to work with me, I highly recommend the Chiron journey, which is 3 sessions, and it gives us the greatest of excuses to get intimate with the mentor and to find out what exactly it means to have him by sign and house and aspect in your natal chart, but also what he's doing on the move and how to be really tuned into the medicine that he's trying to serve to you. And I've been doing this with a handful of people ever since I launched it, and it's for sure my favorite reading that I offer. It's just so great to continually really step in to the Chiron role as well. I think that's all of our goal in life between, say, ages 30 and 50 is to have all of our wounds really integrated and understood, and then be able to turn that, to alchemize it into medicine. And so just amazing to be able to offer such a thing. You can find it on my site at holstoheavens.com. The music in the background is El Bujo. Love this project. If they're coming to your town, support them. Purchase their albums online on Bandcamp or wherever else you can find their music. And I'm going to leave you with a song by Lump. That's right, Lump. If you're not familiar with Lump, it is Laura Marling's side project with Mike Lindsay, and it's just so incredible. And there was this night, it was actually Saturday night after we did this amazing dinner called the Future Dinner, where we dressed up as our future selves. And all of the conversation that we were in with everyone at dinner was in context of our future self and what we were dreaming. It was such a cool experience. And the woman, Tara, that was cooking for us, highly recommend checking out her food, by the way, The Medicine Circle on Instagram. It's amazing, like what she was cooking for us, and that night was no exception. And when we all concluded our dinner experience, I threw on the song that you're about to listen to, and then we all got to dancing. And my dance partner was a pool cleaner, so had a lot of fun with that. And it was a little ridiculous, but had a lot of fun with that. And yeah, we just had a blast. It's so amazing when you incorporate dance and that kind of release in an environment like that. And so be well, be kind, and I will talk with you soon enough.